Hello and welcome to today's Wyoming Community Navigator program webinar. So glad that you're here today joining our presentation. My name is Devin Costa-Cargill. I am the Regional Director for the Wyoming Small Business Development Center Network. I currently have the pleasure of serving the Bighorn Basin or the northwest corner of the state. I will be your facilitator today, working behind the scenes through the chat and the question functions to support your experience today and hopefully help with any technical difficulties should they arrive. The Wyoming Community Navigator program is funded by the U.S. Small Business Administration, or the SBA, and it utilizes Wyoming Entrepreneurial Support Network to reduce barriers that all businesses face at one point, including those owned by groups as veterans, women, and those from rural communities and communities of color. The Wyoming Community Navigator program uses a hub and spoke model to pursue its goals. And through the collective efforts, the hub and spokes provide training, mentorship, access to capital, and other resources to help business owners overcome those barriers and build resiliency and ultimately be the driving force of the Wyoming economic recovery. The Wyoming Small Business Development Center Network is a University of Wyoming program, and it's available to all residents in the state and funded by the Wyoming Business Council, in addition to the U.S. Small Business Administration, or SBA. We provide no-cost, confidential advising and technical assistance to Wyoming's entrepreneurs and small business owners. The Wyoming SBDC network advisors are located throughout the state, as you can see here on this map, and all of us can serve you to meet your individual needs. We not only help new businesses get started, but we help current owners with growth, reinvention, exiting, and recovering from the various challenges that you may face over the life of your business journey. Today's webinar, Digital Literacy for Small Business Owners, Evaluating Information Online, is presented by Bridget Manley. Bridget is an e-learning specialist with a passion for helping learners become more effective agents in their careers and in their communities. She co-funded Ascendant Design and Training with her husband, Daniel Patterson, also here today, in July of 2020. And before that, she was the curriculum manager for a Denver-based startup company where she developed compliance and manufacturing training with the state legal cannabis industry. So now I'd love to turn over this presentation today. Well, first, let me introduce Daniel as well. Daniel Patterson is a software systems developer with over 30 years of multidisciplinary experience in software, electronical, and mechanical design. He's been involved in several different industries, including logistics, gaming, music, and heavy equipment, to just name a few. In those industries, Daniel has managed projects large and small, overseeing research, development, engineering, and IT departments, as well as managing the implementation and upkeep of automated production systems. And so I'd like to turn over the presentation today to our presenters, Bridget and Daniel.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Thank you for that awesome introduction, Devin. We're always happy to be here with the SBDC. We hope that wherever you're dialing in from today, you're having a good day, whether you're having snow or sunshine or somewhere in between. We know it's spring in Wyoming, and that's always interesting. So thanks for taking time to join us today to talk about digital literacy for small business owners. Our intention today is to give you some practical strategies you can use for analyzing, comparing, and evaluating digital sources so that you can make informed decisions for your business. And you'll pardon me if I'm looking both ways. I've got a separate monitor here. So just a little bit more about us today. I am kind of the de facto head of services and customer relationships for Ascendant Design and Training. Before that, several careers ago, I was first a journalist for small daily newspapers in Colorado and Wyoming. And then after that, I was a librarian at the Carbon County Library System based in Rawlins. So I have some experience practicing digital literacy on kind of a very practical boots on the ground perspective. Daniel has a specialization or several specializations in information technology, data management, and AI integration, all of which have some interaction and connection with digital literacy. So we're hoping today that with our shared expertise, we can answer any questions you have and facilitate an enlightening and lively discussion today. So with that, let's just take a brief look at what we'll do today. So we're going to start with a broad perspective and then gradually drill down to a few key actionable skills that you can start using right away. We're going to start by exploring what digital literacy is, and then we'll shift to exploring a framework for understanding digital literacy created by the European Union. This is called digital competencies or DigComp for short. And this includes 5 discrete competency areas. We're going to be focusing mainly on the first one, which is information and data literacy. And then finally, we're going to drill down specifically into a one competency area in there called finding and assessing information. And that's where we'll spend most of our time today. But before we get started, I wanted to just give you a chance to kind of start playing around with this idea and connecting it to what you already know. We have a Slido poll on the screen. You can join the poll either by scanning the QR code on the screen or going to slido.com and entering the code you see there, 3566828. If you go to the website, there'll be a bar right at the top where you can enter that code. So please take a moment to log into the poll and tell us in just just a sentence or two, how would you define digital literacy? And your responses will appear on screen in real time, so we can see everybody's ideas and discuss. So I'll give you a minute to do that. Okay. Yeah, one answer is awareness of source quality. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, we'll talk about some strategies you can use today to assess the quality of sources. Okay, yeah, the ability to read and comprehend information presented digitally. Okay, yeah, I mean, that definitely falls into the literacy category, right? And in the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about, what literacy means in this context and how that particular definition can sometimes be a little bit slippery. There's lots of definitions of what literacy is, right? So, okay, yeah, when you can trust the source. Perfect, yeah. The ability to manage multiple inputs. Yeah, definitely. I would say that's definitely a part of digital literacy. We won't really focus on that too much today, but that is definitely one component. Ability to understand and interact with digital information. Yeah, definitely. As technologies continue to evolve, that becomes an ever more important skill, knowing how to access information through multiple inputs and multiple technologies. Yeah. Knowing how to identify the quality of information mentioned as source quality. Yeah, definitely. So again, all these are excellent answers. We're going to focus mainly today on, basically evaluating the value of a source, but these are all parts of digital literacy. So thank you for participating today. We'll have a couple more instances for you to participate. So if you have that Slido open either on your phone or on your computer, you can leave that open for the rest of today's webinar. Okay, so let's talk about what is digital literacy as defined by the experts, right? So let's start with this definition from the American Library Association. They define it as the ability to use information and communication technologies to find, evaluate, and create and communicate information. And this requires both cognitive and technical skills. Now, it's important to note that this definition was created in 2011, more than 10 years ago. And a lot has changed since then. In fact, right now, there's really no general consensus on what digital literacy actually means. It's a big nebulous term. So some experts actually prefer to set the term aside entirely and use other terms like digital literacies, plural, new literacies, or multiliteracy. And I think this is important because the debate around the term's meaning really underscores how rapidly technology is evolving and how fluid our understanding of literacy can be in this context. I think personally for me, probably the most useful framework is thinking about digital competence. And this is what the European Union uses when it talks about these skills. So next, we're going to look at their model for what digital competence is. So the EU defines it as confident, critical, and responsible use of and engagement with digital technologies for learning, work, and participation in society. So that's a huge, huge bucket, right? That includes, a whole range of knowledge, skills, and attitudes. So they break it down into 5 distinct areas. The first one being information literacy, or information and data literacy. And this is all about finding, evaluating, and organizing information. This is where we'll spend most of our time today. Another area is communication and collaboration. This includes participating in society through digital services, as well as managing your digital presence or managing your digital reputation. Digital content creation is about making, editing, and sharing digital content through legal and ethical means. So part of this competency area is knowing how to apply copyright and licenses. So like when you're using stock photography, for instance, knowing how to find the license and know what you can and cannot do with that image. Safety is focused not only on protecting your devices, content, personal data, and your privacy in digital environments, but it also includes protecting physical and psychological health. And this is important because, over the last few years, there's been some more research that's come out about how digital technologies can affect our mental health for good or bad. So this particular area focuses on that as well. And the final competency area, oops, got ahead of myself, sorry. The final competency area is, sorry, there we go. Okay, the final one is problem solving. And this is the higher level, probably the highest level competency area. This is all about identifying and resolving problems in digital environments, as well as staying up to date with digital evolution. Now, if you've been following what's happening with AI technologies, you probably are practicing part of this competency area, trying to understand what it does, what it means for your business and for society as a whole. But again, today our focus is going to be primarily on information and data literacy. So let's dig into that just a little bit more. This particular competency area includes 3 distinct skills: browsing, assessing, and managing. And this all applies to data, information that you find online or in digital environments. So today we're going to focus mostly on those first 2, browsing and assessing, with the majority of our time spent on assessing data, how you do that. Okay. So first, though, we're just going to give you just some few quick best practices for browsing or finding information online. Some of this may already be familiar with you, but hopefully it'll be a good refresher. And we hope to also share some new information too that you can use. So the reason this is important, the reason why a good search is important is because finding relevant, reliable information starts with a solid search. So let's start from the basics. When you're planning to browse for information online, the first step is to articulate your need. And that includes being able to identify your goal. So maybe you're doing market research for a new product or service, and you need to see if there's enough demand in your market for that product or service. Or maybe you're learning a new skill. Maybe you have a small team of employees and you want to start hosting one-on-one meetings with them on a regular basis to improve employee retention and engagement. But if you've never had those kinds of meetings before, then you may not know what kind of questions to ask, how often to have these meetings. That might be your goal as well, to learn that skill. So once you have your goal pinned down, the next strategy is to formulate a research question that you can use to guide your search. And this research question should be clear, direct, and contextualized. So here's an example of what that might look like. Again, let's say I'm the business owner who wants to start doing one-on-one meetings. My research question could be, I'm instituting weekly one-on-one meetings with my team to improve employee retention and engagement. What should I do to make sure these meetings are effective? So I've defined not only what I want to do or what my question is, but I've also defined why it's important to me and how I plan to use that information. So once you have your question planned out, the next step, of course, is to actually conduct a search. And this will look different depending on what type of technology you're using. If you're using a traditional search engine like Google, you want to take that research question and translate it into a set of keywords that are most likely to correlate with relevant web pages. So for instance, if we take that research question about using AI or about one-on-one meetings, our search might look like this: strategies for effective employee one-on-ones. So we just basically pulled out all of the most important keywords that are likely to bring up the results that we need. Now, of course, when we put this into Google and hit search, we're going to get a whole list of results. So then we have to, sift through and find which ones are relevant, which ones are not, which ones are paid placement. As you're probably aware, the first, I think, 5 or so entries on Google are typically paid placement. So it's important to be mindful of that as well. And then if you need to go back and refine your search as needed. Now, if you're using an AI tool, this is actually this process is a little bit more straightforward, because you can actually put your, you can put your research question directly into the AI tool and ask it in natural language. And I'll actually show you what that looks like. So give me a moment while I switch screens here. Okay. All right, so you should be able to see my screen. This is a research tool or an AI tool called Perplexity. It's kind of like ChatGPT, but unlike ChatGPT, it will actually show you the sources it uses to generate a response. And I prefer to use that because then I can check its work and also, do some more research on my own. Okay, sorry, I paused screen sharing. Give me just a second here. I need to copy my research question. Okay. Actually, I'll just type it in manually. That'll be fine. Okay. So I'm going to ask it. I'm going to say, you are a small business coach. I'm giving it a persona. I'm telling it, how I want, or I'm telling it the persona I want it to respond to me with. I'm instituting, pardon my bad spelling, weekly one-on-one meetings with my team to improve employee retention and engagement. What should I do to make these meetings effective? Okay, cool. Again, my research question, natural language, nothing special. I hit enter and it'll automatically generate a response for me. So it's telling me to focus on employee needs, ask good questions, offer support. It's got quite a few, improve performance, things like that. And at the top, you can see it has some sources linked to. These are the sources that you use to generate the response. The first one looks like a journal, or excuse me, an article from Harvard Business Review, which I find to be a pretty good source. So again, it's given me some good ideas for what I can do. I want to fact check these and just make sure that these are all correct, because AI does have a tendency to make things up sometimes. So I want to validate all of it, but it gives me a good starting point, much more straightforward than if I were just searching for that on Google. So if you're interested in learning more about how to use AI tools like this, we will be having a webinar next month on April 11th to kind of give you, to give you an introductory look at how to use AI in your business. But for now, we'll go back to our webinar here. Okay. So once you've done your search, either through a browser or through AI, the final and most important step is to assess the digital information. And this is where we're really going to focus today. So this, to do this well, it's important to be mindful of just some key ideas and practices. First, we're going to look at the difference between misinformation and disinformation. Once we know what those things are and how to spot them, it'll be easier to validate sources and know whether or not information is good to use.
Hey, Bridget, I think it's showing your notes slide right now.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, wanted to catch you while I could.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's see if I can fix that. Oops, that's not it. Okay, I'm going to just restart that. Sorry about that. Okay, that's the one I want. Okay, Maureen, can you see my slide deck?
I can see 2 screens now.
Huh, okay.
Let
Sorry.
me, that's okay.
Okay, screen. Aha, here we go. I think I got it. How about that one?
That looks great. Thank you so much.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for catching that. I appreciate it. Okay, so after we've talked about and are able to define misinformation versus disinformation, next we're going to look at some strategies you can use for validating the information you find. And finally, we'll go over briefly some red flags that you can use that might indicate a source is less than reliable. So let's start with misinformation versus disinformation. These two often get confused, but they're slightly different. Misinformation is when false or misleading information is spread unintentionally. People who share it don't realize that it's either not up to date or incomplete or misleading or just downright wrong. Instances in which this might happen include when somebody finds an article from a parody source like The Onion and doesn't realize that it's a parody, so they share it as actual news. That's an example. The difference between that and disinformation is that disinformation is about the deliberate spread of false or misleading information. And it's usually for a specific purpose, like discrediting a person or an organization. So the key difference between these two things really comes down to intent. Both are about false or misleading information, but misinformation is spread unintentionally, while disinformation is spread deliberately. Okay, so let's have some fun. If you can log back into Slido, please. I have 4 instances of either misinformation or disinformation. I would like you to select the ones that you think are examples of disinformation or a source actively and deliberately trying to mislead readers or viewers. So I'll give you a minute to log into that. If you have questions or if you have problems getting to the poll, please put that in the chat and we can help you out. Some of these might be a little bit, not tricky, but might take just a little bit of critical thinking. Again, you want to focus on the intent. What is the user's intent here? Okay, I'll give you just a minute or 2 more, just maybe a minute more, and then I'll click to show the results and then we'll discuss together. Okay, let's see what we got here. Okay, excellent. You guys are right on. Yeah, these are the 2 examples of disinformation. Let's go over these one by one. So the first one is a spam bot on a social media platform intentionally spreads posts that promote false claims about an organization. Yeah, this is a classic form of disinformation because it is a conscious intent to mislead. Now you might be wondering, what's a spam bot? Well, bots are automated online accounts, and they can be, doing a variety of things. Malicious bots, like these ones, are specifically designed to spread misinformation online, typically in social media platforms. They often pose as real human users, and they're designed to create, promote, and spread disinformation, particularly around controversial issues. So you might be wondering, okay, well, how do I know if something's a bot? Here are some signs that you might look for. They're not always a surefire sign that you're dealing with a bot, but these are some of the more obvious ones. If you go to the profile or the account that spread the information, check to see if there's a profile picture. If there's not, it could be an indication that somebody just set up the bot account really quickly and didn't bother with the profile picture. Or Or if there is one, try running the image through a reverse image search. And if you see the image all over the internet, say like on stock photos and stuff like that, that's a sign it could be a bot. Because a lot of times those accounts, again, are hastily made and they just want to put a picture up there quickly. And so they pull something, you know, from like a free stock photos site like Unsplash or Pexels or something like that. You also want to check the bio to see if it has lots of spelling errors, or if it seems incomplete, or if it seems nonsensical. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bot, but that can be one sign that it is. See if they have any followers. Sometimes bots are just meant to spread information, so they don't actually have any followers themselves. See if they do lots of posts in a short time. That's usually one of the biggest tells. It's that they're just spreading things as quickly as possible. And then finally, see if they're only posting or reposting about a specific trend or topic. That's usually a sign that it's a bot too, because again, it's focused on usually one or two really controversial issues. So good job catching that one. Let's go to the next one. A news outlet publishes an article with a misleading headline designed to get more clicks. Yes, disinformation. We know that because it's an editorial choice to run that misleading headline. Now let's contrast that with the third option. A news outlet publishes an article that reports a false claim, and the outlet later runs a correction. This one's a little trickier because we can't really know what the intent was. We don't really know why the misinformation or why the incorrect information was in that article, but we know that the outlet later ran a correction. So they wanted to set the record straight and make sure that that disinformation didn't spread any farther. Now, it still has the same effect, right? People can oftentimes, form incorrect opinions based on that information. If they don't actually see the correction, they won't correct that in their own minds. But in this case, it's an example of misinformation because it wasn't intentional, probably. And the final one, this one's obvious. A friend shares a Facebook post without realizing it promotes a debunked urban myth. Misinformation. They didn't realize that it was not correct. Okay, excellent, great job. All right, so let's next in this next part of the webinar, we'll look at some strategies you can use to validate information. Some of these are, things that you've probably already done or used, but we hope that some of these might be new too. Like we want to give you some new tools that you can put in your toolkit. So the first one, pretty obvious, right? Evaluate the source. Assess its credibility, reliability, and expertise. Look for indicators like the author's qualification, the publication or organization's reputation, and whether evidence or research have been provided to back the claims made in the information source, whether it's an article, a YouTube video, whatever it might be. Look for cross-referencing. Compare the information in that information source with multiple reputable sources like libraries, learning institutions, government organizations, nonprofits, things like that, and see if you can verify its accuracy and consistency. Usually, it's not always true, but usually if information can be corroborated with several independent sources, it's more likely to be reliable. If you're looking at scholarly or scientific sources, see if the article has undergone peer review. Peer-reviewed articles have been evaluated by experts in the field for accuracy and validity. And if it has not yet been officially peer-reviewed, because some of them are released, pre-peer review, just do a little digging and see what you can find about experts in the field who have read the article and kind of what their unofficial thoughts are on it. So you can kind of see if it passes the smell test even before it's gone through peer review. You can also fact check the source. You can use fact-checking websites like Snopes, factcheck.org, or PolitiFact. And you can use these to verify claims, debunk rumors, and confirm the accuracy of information. Now, of course, you want to make sure that your fact checker is reliable. You want to fact check your fact checker. So you can use some of the tools that we talk about here in these next two slides to do that. Again, make sure that they, make sure that they have a good reputation, maybe check them out online, see what other sources say about them, things like that. Whenever you can, make sure to consult expert opinion. Seek insights from subject matter experts or professionals who specialize in this relevant field. Their expertise can provide valuable perspectives on the accuracy and significance of the information. Okay, just a few more for you. Always try to practice critical analysis. Try to evaluate the logic, coherence, and potential biases present in the information. Question the assumptions they make, and also make sure to assess the validity of the arguments they make and consider alternative viewpoints. You can also look at checking dates and citations as well. Make sure the information is current and properly cited. If you've ever been on Wikipedia, sometimes they'll flag an article that has a claim, and they'll flag it and say this cannot be, or basically say like this is not cited. And it's like, and that's their way of saying like, hey, this information may or may not be reliable. We don't know where this information comes from. This, we need to have more citations so we can know whether or not this information, is reliable. So that's something you can do as well. If you're, again, using research or studies, review the methodology or how the scientists used, or what strategies the scientists used to gather and analyze the data. Assess whether the methods are sound and whether the conclusions are supported by evidence. So one thing you can look for instance, is the sample size. Typically, not always, but larger sample sizes tend to create more valid results, especially when the sample size is more diverse, different demographics and such. If they only did a study with a few people, like 10 people, and they all had the same demographics, that doesn't mean that it's false or wrong. It just means that there needs to be more studies that includes a wider set of sources, or like, wider set of participants to validate that conclusion actually bears out. Also be mindful of context. Be mindful of how context can, be mindful of how cultural, historical, and societal factors do and often can influence how information is interpreted and disseminated, right? Because we all have different filters that we use to understand the world. And those sources will probably have similar filters as well. So just be mindful of that. And finally, when you can, participate in healthy feedback and discussion. Look for online communities that have well-moderated policies to ensure the to make sure that the discussion remains healthy. Look for those kinds of communities where you can have thoughtful and engaging dialogues with peers, colleagues, and other people to discuss, to discuss information that you find online. And with that, make sure to solicit feedback and to get different perspectives to gain more comprehensive understanding. Right now, it's really easy to kind of fall into one or more echo chambers. This particular tip is basically an encouragement to kind of push back on that a little bit and, just see what else is out there, see what other ideas people have. Okay. So in this last section, we're going to talk about some red flags. And I'm going to preface this by saying, if you see one or more of these flags, it doesn't mean automatically that a source is either misinformation or disinformation. It's rather, it's an indication that you can slow down just a little bit and think more critically about how, basically to think more critically about the source and what it's telling you. An important thing to know about online platforms, especially social media, is that they try to create what's called a frictionless experience, right? So it's really easy to just click like, buy this, share this, do this stuff. There's no real friction or pause built into the platform where you have to stop and really think about, how is this going to impact somebody else? Do I really need these $500 tennis shoes? I don't know. The whole thing is designed to make you act very quickly. So when you see these red flags, you can think of it as kind of like a friction point where you can say, stop, wait, I want to think about this. I want to step back a minute. Because again, these platforms are not designed to have those built in. And that's part of one of the problems that we're seeing with these platforms a lot of times, is that they are designed specifically for engagement. And in this case, engagement typically means getting people to react in a strong emotional way, usually out of like anger or fear or some other strong negative emotion. So again, you can push back on that. You can take control of your own experience by building in some friction on your own end and how you engage with these things. So with that said, let's look at some of these red flags. The first one is probably one that you are very familiar with, hyperbolic headlines or clickbait. These are usually designed to provoke, again, a strong reaction, curiosity, fear, anger, enthusiasm, right? A common one is, I did fill in the blank. You'll never believe what happens next. And then of course you click on it and it's totally anticlimactic because the story is not exciting at all, right? That's a common technique they use to get you to click on stuff. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's misinformation or disinformation. A lot of, fairly reputable sources do that sometimes. But again, it's an indication that if they're really trying to get you to click on something, it might be a sign that it's not as legitimate as it could be. Also look for loaded words or words that are designed to, again, provoke a strong emotional reaction. Now, we talked just a few minutes ago about the importance of critical thinking. And one thing that we're seeing more frequently online is orchestrated attempts to basically take your higher level thinking brain offline by getting you highly emotionally activated. And this is one sign that, again, the source that you're using may not be trying to, say like inform you or even entertain you. It might be trying to get you to feel very strongly in a certain way and behave in a certain way and think in a certain way. So again, loaded words are not always a sign that something is misinformation, but it usually is a pretty good signal to stop and just assess the validity of the source overall. Also look out for opinions presented as facts. That happens quite frequently. I think some news sources have gotten a lot better at flagging some articles as opinion, but sometimes it's kind of hard to find that. Sometimes it's really tiny. And sometimes some sources don't even try to do that. They just try to say, hey, this is a thing and it's, it's absolutely true. Well, maybe not. Maybe that's an opinion. Maybe that's an interpretation. Again, a sign for you to stop and kind of like, I wonder what they're actually saying here. I wonder what the facts are behind this. Watch out for claims that cannot be corroborated with other sources. So if there's a post on social media that says a UFO from Mars landed in my backyard and you can't find that validated anywhere else, it's probably a sign that it's either misinformation or disinformation. A little bit more of a subtle flag is using excessive punctuation or using all caps for emphasis. And this is another example of trying to get people emotionally activated. All caps is often interpreted as kind of like shouting in print, trying to get your attention. Excessive punctuation, like 5 exclamation points, same thing. They're trying to get you to respond in an emotional way. So again, doesn't mean that it's necessarily a bad deal, but it's a sign that you want to be careful. Okay, just a few more for you. Look out for outlandish claims. And we kind of talked about this earlier with sometimes people accidentally sharing parody sources as news. This is a common one that happens. Look out for sources that have no byline. And if you're not familiar with the term, the byline is at the top where it says by so-and-so. It just tells you who wrote the article. Sources that don't have a byline, that don't have an actual human creating that, a little bit more suspect than those that don't, because there's no one to hold accountable if the information is wrong. Watch out for lack of primary sources. And primary sources are things like reports and interviews, things that are generated right at the source of, whatever event is happening. Sources that don't use primary sources at all, they're a little less reliable because they're not giving you the information they use to generate that news or generate that opinion. So you want to make sure that you're looking out for that as well. Probably the biggest one is sources that try to reduce a complex topic into a simple single narrative that is usually often divisive. So taking something very complex, squishing it down into a two-sided binary, good, bad, right, wrong, all this stuff. That's usually one of the bigger signs. Again, they're trying to get you to be emotionally activated. They're trying to get you to believe a specific thing. You can push back on this by intentionally trying to thicken that narrative. Ask yourself, what else is going on here? What things about the situation are we not thinking about? How would somebody who I disagree with, how would they see the situation differently than I do? What argument would they have with my interpretation? All these things are things you can do to help kind of, again, thicken those narratives and develop a more nuanced view of, basically the whole world essentially, but in this instance, the particular topic that they're talking about. Okay, so I know we've covered quite a bit of ground today. Thanks for sticking with us through the end. I just wanted to read it real quickly before we go into Q&A. The reason this matters is that your business decisions are only as good as the data that supports them. It's really important to critically vet the information that forms your mental models of the world, right? Everything you read, everything you see, whether you realize it or not, is helping build an schema, enter framework for how you understand the world. And those mental models will then be used to help you make critical decisions. So you want to make sure that that internal mental scaffolding is sound. And we hope today that by using the strategies we explored, you can ensure that you're relying on validated, trustworthy information to make critical business decisions. Okay, and with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Hey, thank you, Bridget. That was great. There's so much good information in there, and just thanks for being here. I will say before we dive into any questions, if you guys have any, please stick them in the Q&A box on the GoToWebinar control panel. That we do have another webinar coming up today at 12, dealing with email scams, and a lot of the tips, tricks, and tools that you shared today would help with that topic as well. So these are really good webinars to have back to back and maybe attend back to back because I think they build on each other.
Excellent. Yeah, double header. I didn't plan that, but that's awesome.
Yeah, it was a really good stacking of topics today. Any tips for small business owners who get the majority of their news from like local Facebook groups? Maybe ways to confirm firsthand interpretations of what's happening in their town?
Okay, so like things that appear on their Facebook group, like happenings around town, things like that?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I think a lot
Yeah,
of
that's a
folks
good.
don't have local newspapers anymore. So how do you confirm some of those more localized incidents?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That's a little bit trickier because, if you don't have like a local news source to corroborate with, it gets a little bit more work on your end, but it is possible. I would say probably the best thing to do is go back to those source documents. So for instance, if there's something going on your local Facebook about something that happened at the city council meeting, those entities, those government entities are required to publish publicly the meeting's minutes. So you can go on to the city council website, navigate to city council, and they'll usually have a list of either recordings of the meeting virtually, a transcript or notes, any of those, and you can go to actually see what was actually said during that meeting and see if it stacks up with what you're seeing online. Because sometimes, sometimes we have a game of telephone where one person says it and they share and they add a little bit more and add a little bit more, and by the time it gets to you, it could be a little bit distorted. So that's a good thing you can do as well. And again, whenever you can, see if you can go to the local source. I would recommend actually building relationships with your local lawmakers, whether it's your city council member, your county commissioner, so that when something comes up and you see it, around Facebook, and you're like, I don't know if this is true or not, send them an email, give them a call, have them tell you what they saw as happening or, what they actually said. And then of course you can also rely on, honestly, like local bloggers. Sometimes small communities have people who are unofficial journalists who have their own blogs. You just, again, want to make sure that you're validating the information, see how accurate they are, see if they run corrections. A lot of corrections is usually not a great sign, but if they are at least fessing up to their factual mistakes, that means that they're, one, holding themselves accountable, and secondly, that they have some sort of internal editorial process. And that's the third thing I would recommend, actually. Whatever source that you're using locally, whether it's a blog or a newspaper, make sure that they have some sort of editorial process, that it goes through at least one other person, not only to read for grammar and spelling and stuff, but to check facts. So I hope that's helpful and answered your question.
That's great advice. Yeah, thank you. Can be hard in our small towns and trying to get news that is accurate, and appreciate that. Devin, do you have any questions to wrap up today?
I do have a few, just keeping in mind what some clients might need. One of the first things was the email, so I thank you for bringing that up, because I think that's one way in which small businesses they quickly try to handle things and sometimes can overlook some of the important fact checks that you brought up, just those pause features. But one of the things that I think would be really helpful too is to get on mailing lists for email updates for some of the organizations that matter to small businesses, and then put some time on your calendar to read those, so that then you have that frame of reference of information that can help you debunk some of those things that might come across a Facebook post, or even just in a conversation with a colleague or a customer. And then, of course, just to reiterate the fact that as regional directors, we are a support, that we have our feet on the ground in communities, and we can be very helpful in helping you identify who to contact if you have questions or you'd like to verify information. We are such a reliable source for you, and have information that might be helpful as you're trying to determine what's true and what's necessary to know.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, that's an excellent point. Yeah, like, trusted organizations that tend to be kind of in the middle of things and that have feelers out in different directions, like the SBDC. Those are great sources to go to find people who can help you, direct you to those places you can go to fact check and get more information. Yeah, perfect.
I really appreciate all this information. Very helpful as I'm thinking about just some of the questions and issues that I've dealt with my clients as of late.
Yeah,
I was just thinking, working with a regional director to create a list of some of the organizations that are really beneficial to the industry could be helpful, because then you can kind of front load some of those reputable sources. For example, if it was like NFIB, for example, which could be an organization that could provide some feedback on legislation that's important for small businesses. And this is in no way a plug, just talking about some of the things that I'm hearing from clients. Or OIDA is the transportation industry, similar organization that provides publication information and legislative updates. Of course, there are a variety of different industries in the state that could benefit from that list to help them as they're preparing to seek out information.
Yeah, definitely. That's excellent. I actually had a question for you, Devin. Have you noticed a rise in misinformation and disinformation coming to small business owners through multiple channels?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's something that we kind of work on a weekly basis. There's a lot of different pieces of information, and everyone seeks out and uses information in different ways, as you've talked about today as well. One of the things that I think comes up regularly is this concept of being reached out to and not knowing how to verify that information. And so I was actually able to do this with a client recently. They received a call from someone who identified themselves as a third-party representative to their POS system. So the keyword third party there kind of clicked a little, in my mind. I'm thinking, so POS is selling information, number one, probably not news, but still something that I was able to point out to the client. But then two, I was able to show the client how to ask for some information. What is your name? What is the name of your organization? What information are you asking for today? And then quickly analyzing it. They were asking for sales data over the phone. So quickly being able to say something like, thank you for contacting me today. I'm not at liberty to share this information with you over the phone. So thank you for your call today. And then immediately assess, do we need to call your POS system administrator? Do we need to call customer service? We decided that at that time it was probably just fishing for information, this call, and it wasn't necessary. Nothing had changed for her in that domain. So that was really helpful, just to kind of help her realize that some of these calls you don't need to follow up on, whereas some information you might feel like you want to secure and make sure that your profiles and services are safe and secure. So those are the kind of things that my customers probably deal with on a weekly basis, getting calls asking for information.
Yeah, that's good to know. Good to know. Yeah, I think it's a lot harder to be a savvy business owner now than it has been in the past, just with that massive flood of information, and it's hard to verify it. And then now you have AI deepfakes, and it's like, oh gosh, like how do I do this, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, great question. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, the question and answer box is clear right now, so I just want to say thank you to everyone for attending. Thank you, Bridget, Daniel, and Devin for being here today. This session was recorded and will be available to all registrants at the following the conclusion of the presentation. There will be a survey that pops up as you're logging off today, so please be sure to fill that out as it helps us create better content for you and to serve your business. But I hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon, and also hope to see y'all at the email scams webinar at noon. So take a look at the Wyoming SBDC training page for more great training opportunities, and we'll see everybody next time. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.